Hi everyone, thank you for joining my tutorial video. Today we're going to learn how to personalize s'more sticks. So here's just a fun little play on some s'more sayings, but you can also personalize them with names. And you can purchase the s'more sticks at the link below. You can also do the handles with personalized names. There's a bunch of different fonts here. I'll share these with you later in the video. So you can see the s'more sticks are also expandable. So collapsed here, they're 12 inches and they expand up to 32 inches. And that allows you to just keep a safe distance from the fire. Okay, moving over to the computer portion, we're going to use Silhouette Studio. I've upgraded to Business Edition, but the basic edition is free, so you can just download that if you'd like. So the first thing I'm going to do is type out the sayings or the names that we want on our s'more stick. So if you look over here to the left, there's a text box. I'm going to click this letter A, and then I'm going to click on my canvas, and I can type here whatever I would like to say. So instead of just hitting enter and then typing them all, where you can see there's a large box around both words, but I can't ever select it individually. So to save myself from then having to separate everything, I am just going to type them all individually. Okay, so now that I've typed them all individually, we can pick our fonts. So I did measure the s'more stick. So I decided that I wanted all of my fonts to be approximately around 0.4. I'm just going to highlight each one. Okay, and if this box isn't already open, mine's already open, but you can just open it by clicking on this A symbol here. So for the dad, the font I used was DTC Miss Honey. I'm going to click that, and you can see it just changes the font up here as well. So while it's still highlighted, I'm going to change the size. And I decided that for this one, I wanted it to be a 0.4 inch height. So that works out to 30.1, enter. So you can see when I click here, the height is 0.4 inches. The length doesn't matter because unless you're typing something really long and it won't fit on the s'more stick, but you'll see that in the glowforge when you do it. The 0.4 inches height isn't actually the height of the font itself. It's the height of the box around the font. So the actual font itself is a little bit smaller, which I think is beneficial because the s'more sticks are a rounded surface. So I think if you try to make the font too big, it ends up not working out. I'm going to highlight the mom font. So the font I use for the mom is this one here. I'm just going to click it because then you can see the name a little bit more clearly up here. It's this font here, ZNIKO. I found this one, I searched it on Google. So for the mom font, I decided I wanted the height again to be a 0.4 inches. So that works out to 22.94. And you can always double check, and the height listed here is 0.4 inches. Highlight the Claire font. Font I used was SLF Jelly Bean. And again, you can see it comes up here, SLF Jelly Bean. The height I actually chose for this is 32. So that's just under 4. It's 0.396 inches. So highlight the Jack. The font I chose for this one is called Hitman. And I'm going to change the size here to 26. So this one actually is 0.433, ends up being a little bit more than 4 inches. But again, you have to keep in mind that this is the box around the font and not the actual font itself. This is actually the same font I used for the s'more sayings. Highlight Jennifer, chose Arial, and the size is 25.75. Ends up being 0.4 inches. I'm going to highlight with the Brandon. And the font I used here is Arial Narrow. And the size here is 25.12. So again, you can see that it's 0.4 inches in height. So now that we've sized all of these, I don't resize them once they're in glowforge. They just go into glowforge in that size, and I make sure to keep them that size. So now what I'm going to do for each one is highlight it and click Make Compound Path. Make Compound Path. And I do each one separately, so that way it allows me to modify each one separately in glowforge when I have to delete them, etc. So now you're ready to hit File, Save As, save to your hard drive, and then you can label it as anything you'd like. Make sure that you save it as an SVG and hit OK. The next thing I'm going to do is open up a new tab here, and I'm going to type out all the Smore sayings. So I'm going to hit the text. And again, I'm going to do each one separately. Okay, for this one, just to make it easy, I'm going to put it all on one line. I don't like how it's on two lines, so I'm just going to double click. I'll get a blue bar at the right, and I'm just going to slide that over just enough so that it's all on one line. Now I have typed these all separately, but I can highlight them all at the same time to modify all the fonts at the same time, considering these ones are going to be the same. So I did mention that for the sayings, I chose the same font as I did for the Jack. So I'm going to click the A over here, and it was Hitman. So you can see all of those have changed. The size is the same as well. I'm going to type it at 26. So you can see it ends up being the 0.433. This one is a little bit smaller, but I tend to like it for the sayings because it makes the sticks not look overcrowded. It just makes them, gives them an elegant look in my opinion. Sorry guys, my video stopped recording. All I did was highlight each one and double click and hit Make Compound Path. And I did that for each one. And then you are ready to hit File, Save As, Save to Hard Drive. I save these as Smore Sayings. Just make sure you save it as an SVG. You can hit OK. And then this is all ready for the glowforge. I'm not going to do the Smore Sayings because I don't have an order for those right now. All the orders I do have are for the personalized names. But the principles for aligning the sayings are the exact same as for the names. So I'm going to use a different set of names for my orders, and I'll see you over in the glowforge. The other thing I want to mention before we move over to the glowforge, if you haven't done this yet, you absolutely need to. So I had my glowforge for months and I didn't do this, and then I had an incident where my wood hit the arm, and so my laser came off the tracks. And after that, my laser was kind of printing off a little bit. So I went to the alignment and I scroll down to the camera calibration, and all you have to do is click launch the camera recalibrator here. It doesn't take very long. You go through this, and ever since I've done this, my glowforge has been printing amazing. And it makes sense if you think about it. Your glowforge was in transportation on its way to you. We all should have done this upon receiving our glowforge, and we didn't. I don't recall the instructions ever telling me to do that. But if you haven't done this already, I highly recommend it. So once you go through that process, it's going to print out a piece of material like this. Trust me, it is worth it. Even though it costs a piece of material, my alignment has been so much better since I've done that. I'm going to show you the different tools that I also use to help me align. These are the like push pins. You can use them to hold down material. If you're not using these, I highly recommend it. I didn't use them for such a long time, and then I just started using them because I had one work piece of material, but I now use them all the time because they're amazing. I just got these off Etsy. I'm going to use this old gift tag holder that I have. So I use 3 of those push pins. You can see here, I kind of line them up straight in my glowforge like this. And what that's going to allow me to do is put the wood handle against it. So this way I know that if all 3 pieces are touching my wood handle, I know my wood handle's straight. That's how I prevent my handle from being on a slant or crooked. The other thing that I use, you'll see that if you place the s'more stick flat on the crumb tray, you're going to have this metal piece touching the crumb tray. Here is touching the crumb tray, but here is straight up in the air. It's not touching the crumb tray. So I want it to be flat, so that way everything is the same distance from the laser itself. So in order to do that, I have to put something under the edge here. And I just played around a few different materials of thickness to see what would work, but I ended up settling on 2 of these gift tags. They're 1/4 inch. So I settled for this. I put them just on the edge here in my glowforge, and I just rest the tip on here. So now when this is in my machine, the whole piece of the wood is touching the crumb tray. So then I know the whole length of the wood handle is going to be the same distance from the laser. So one thing you want to be careful of is that your s'more stick isn't out hanging over the edge, because you don't want it to hit the arm here when it's moving. You want to make sure that all pieces of the wood handle are touching your 3 anchor points. These measurements here don't have to be exact. I just put them a little bit far apart. You can put them anywhere, even closer to the edge if you want. The main thing is that they're straight. So then what we're going to do is get our ruler. And I can't start at 1 because my ruler wouldn't fit in here otherwise. So I just go between 6 and 10. I put 6 near the one end, 10 near the other end. So I know that my middle is 8. So I need to line up the 8 with my middle marker here. So in this situation, I know that I have to move this to the left. Sorry, I'm trying to do this with one hand. So just take a little bit of readjusting. Put the 6 on one side, 10 on the other, 8 is in the middle, 8's lined up. That looks excellent. I'll remove my ruler, and then I'll just make sure again that the wood handle is touching all 3 of these pieces. So, and it's not hanging over the edge. So this will be ready to go once I turn on my machine. The other important thing that I do every day before I use my machine is make sure to clean all my lenses. So these are the wipes that I use. I got a big box of these off Amazon. I recommend getting a big box because I go through one every day. So we'll just open that. So there are 3 lenses that I clean daily. The first one is this one here. Just give that a wipe. The second one is this one in here. And the third one is the top of our lid. So I'll give my machine a couple minutes to dry and then we'll get started. Okay, so our glowforge has updated our bed image here. I'm going to upload our image. Okay, and the name I'm using for this one is here. So I'm just gonna get rid of those for now. So I zoom into 300 and then I hit these three dots, hit set focus. I want to set the focus of my machine directly in the middle. What's nice about this setup is that this s'more stick is directly under the camera, and I think that helps with things being centered. For these, I keep medium draft board as the material chosen. I'm going to click on my font here and I'm going to select engrave, and then I'm also going to select manual. And I want the settings to be 1000, 100, and 225. So 1000 speed, 100 power, and 225 lines per inch. Click over here. I'm then going to take my name and I'm going to move it down. For this, I zoom in to 450. And if you click on the name, the box appears around it. I then line up this symbol here directly with my anchor point here in the middle. You can see this is the push pin in my glowforge bed. I think it is very easy to line up, and that's how I know from left to right it's directly in the center. For the top and bottom, I just eyeball that there's the same amount of space on the top of the box and the bottom of the box. So this one obviously needs to be moved down a little bit. I think top and bottom, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna move it over just slightly to the right. So I think that looks pretty good and we're ready to go. So I'm gonna hit ready. So you can see it's gonna take 51 seconds to engrave the name on this stick. Sorry about the noise on that last part, guys. I forgot to turn off my glowforge fan. So you can see it came out great. You can see there's a little bit of brown around it. So all I do is just add a little bit of water to some paper towel. And I just wipe with water, then dry. And you can see it comes out nice and clean. I've never had a problem centering these using this method, so I hope that it works for you guys as well. So I've already set up the next s'more stick, so I'm just gonna delete the Ashley. I'm going to click and I'm gonna hit paste, and all other three names are gonna come up. So then I'm gonna leave the name I want, highlight the two that I don't need, and cut those as well. That saves me from having to reopen the file every time. There you go, guys. There's another set finished. This is the mom one, and I'm just going to show you each one up close so you can get a better look at the engraving. Okay, this is the Zinco font. This is the one you saw mom in. So for this one, I'm just going to highlight, going to make sure medium draft board is selected. I'm going to click here. This font I actually scored, and I used the medium draft board settings for the Glowforge. This is the dad one. This is one of my favorite fonts. I find it very fun. This is the one that you saw Dad in. This is the DTC Miss Honey font. And I already showed you this one in the real example, but I'm just going to show you the settings for this one again. So I'm just going to highlight them, make sure the medium draft board is selected. I'm going to click here. I am going to hit engrave, and then I'm going to hit manual. And the settings are going to be 1000, 100, and 225 lines per inch. I think this is my favorite one of them all. And you can actually see I tried a darker engraving here at first, but this one looked a little burnt, so I changed the settings a little bit. Here's mine with scratches. I had a couple defective ones, and I ended up using those for samples. So this was the Claire one I showed you. This font was the SLF Jelly Bean. So I'm just going to highlight these. I'm going to make sure medium draft board is selected, and for this one I actually scored them, so I'm going to change it to score, and I left this one as the Glowforge settings for medium draft board. So all you have to do is click here, and this one is good to go. This is the Jack one, and this is also the font I use for all the Smore sayings. Originally I did do this one like this at first. The font was a little bit smaller and the engraving was not as dark, so I made the font a little bit bigger and changed my engraving settings, and now I have this. So this one is the Hitman font. That's the one you saw Jack in, or the Smore sayings. So I'm just going to highlight this, make sure medium draft board is selected, and for this one I actually did engrave, and I changed the manual settings to 1000, full power, and 225 per inch. The example I showed you earlier where it was too light, I had done 1100 and 225, and I found that it didn't look good, so these are the new settings for the upgraded Jack one that you saw. This is the Jennifer one. You can see this one's quite deep. Okay, for the Jennifer one, which was the Arial font, I'm going to highlight it, make sure medium draft board is selected, click here. I chose engrave for this one, and I did manual, 1000, full, 225 lines per inch. This is the Brandon one. You can see it's similar to the Jennifer one, just a little bit more narrow, but it's also a deep engraving. Okay, for the Brandon, which was the Arial Narrow, I'm going to highlight it, make sure medium draft board is selected. I'm going to click here, and I also did engrave for this one, and I did the same settings as I did for the previous one. So manual, 1000, full, 225 lines per inch.